Hi, Matt Bisogno here with another of these video roundups, previews. This time I thought I'd look at one of the big races this weekend in an act of probably vain futility. I'm going to have a look at the Victoria Cup, which is a 7 furlong sprint handicap at Ascot. And as usual, the first place we're going to start, after supping on the old Dorset tea, is the going report. So let's just quickly go to, where are we going? We're going to go across to RCA going reports. Now, where have they gone? It's under the RCA. So if you're on Twitter, you can find these. It's very useful. Tweets. And we can go this link here, britishhorseracing.com/racing updates. If you click on that, it will tell you the latest going across the nation's race courses. And I'm particularly interested in Ascot tomorrow, and you can see they updated their going this morning. Soft on the straight course. If I just click on that, I wonder if I can get any more information on that, as in what the weather forecast is and the like, because I'm recording this 11 o'clock Friday morning and the race is Saturday afternoon. That's not actually doing anything. I'm going to go to this other link here, BHA link, which is not open to everybody, unfortunately. I just want to get, there we are. So right, so the going is soft, as it said. Weather 8 mil over the last 24 hours, 25 mil since Tuesday. Occasional showers forecast for Friday and Saturday. So the balance of probabilities is that it will remain soft. So we're going to work on that basis. Okay, now there are a few things about a race like the Victoria Cup. First of all, there are 27 horses declared for the race, so it's a very difficult race in which to try to find the winner. But the trade-off on that is that obviously horses will be priced accordingly, and therefore there is plenty of scope for a value proposition therein. Now, the first thing I noticed straight away is that the going is showing as good to soft, because we haven't had the going update. So I'm just going to change that to soft. It does say soft there. Let's just sort this out a minute. Okay, it's still saying good to soft. Right, well, we can fix that up anyway. On Instant Expert, we can do this. And this. And then we have a view, a soft ground view. Now, what I want to do before I look at the actual race card, I want to showcase a couple of other tools that are quite useful. First of all, let's have a look. Let's go back to the cards page again, because I want to go to the Ascot course info, which you'll find on the right hand side for any race meeting in the UK. And it's worth checking that out, because it has various useful information. Now, in this case, I want to look at the course map, which is the top right here, and if I click on that, you see it it becomes bigger in the screen. Now, we are at Ascot, and the first thing to notice is that Ascot is kind of a quirky shaped track, probably a quirkier shaped track than many people perhaps appreciate. You can see it's quite undulating, and it's quite a stiff uphill climb to the finish. It certainly takes some getting. The 7 furlong start is here, so you can see it's a straight 7, and they actually have 2 mile starts. They have a straight mile here, which the Queen Anne Stakes, the opening race of Royal Ascot, is run over, and they have a round mile, which the St James's Palace Stakes the 3-year-old Group 1 is run over. So the 3-year-olds go that way and the older horses go that way at Royal Ascot. Anyway, 7 is straight with these undulations, and it's a long drag up to the finish in front of the stands. So we need to keep that in mind when we're looking at the information here. Now, what I want to do, I want to use the draw and pace analyzer tools, and the reason for that is because if we look at the draw and pace tools only within the card, it will show us the data specific to 7 furlongs. But there's an argument that says that we could extend out the data set to a broader range of distances. So for instance, we could look at 7 furlongs and a mile. Now we do need to be a bit careful here because we might end up getting the round course handicap data in there as well. But what I really want to do is I want to look at races only of 16 runners plus, big fields, and see what, if anything, we can find out. Now, as you see, I've put it on actual draw, which means accounting for non-runners, and I'm only looking at handicap races. If we look at the win data, we can see that it's just slightly off the page, and let me there we are. Right, now you can see it all. It's a bit smaller, but you can see it all. If we look at the win data, we can see that low drawn runners have had the edge. But if we look at the place data, we can see that this is actually a very pretty even spread, 16, 20, 16 places across the track. More recently, we added IV3, this average of 3 stalls impact value, and it's something that I use a lot personally, and we can see here that it does seem to favour those drawn in single figures. As you can see, a couple of things to note here. So first of all, there is this gathering of winners in stalls 1 to 9, but what we need to take into account here is that of the 13 races that have been run under these conditions, all of them had at least 18 runners. One of them had 19 runners. One of them had 20 runners, and so on. And you can see up to 2 which had 28 runners. In these bigger fields, we can see that a couple of horses have placed, and we just need to be a bit careful about the sample sizes being really small here. So that's, nevertheless, it does seem that there is some advantage potentially to those horses drawn low. Now, that might be a pace bias and it might be a draw bias, and we'll look at that in a second. I'm just going to change this to be 7 furlongs to 7 furlongs to make sure that it doesn't impact, that the data still tells a similar story. And I might just change this to good to soft just to get a little bit more data in the window, notwithstanding that I might be diluting the accuracy of the output. I'm not looking for absolutes here. I'm looking for general pointers. And one of the things that we can see is that although very low draws seem to do quite well, so do high draws, and that the perception here is that against either rail is probably okay. I think. I mean, it's kind of a mixed picture. There's no strong bias here, so one needs to be careful in that context. Again, looking at the draw pace heat map, it's a bit of a Picasso, really. There's not really any clear steer here, and I wouldn't want to be inferring any draw or pace conclusions from that. So essentially what we know is that we don't know. We wouldn't want to be hanging our hat on one side of the draw or the other, or on a particular run style either. Now in the pace analyzer we can just quickly do something here. Ascot flat, 7 furlongs to a mile. We'll try that. Put the going in. We'll do good to soft just to get a bigger range, and we'll do 16 runners to 16 plus, handicaps only. And we can see here that that held up horses win more often than any other running style, but they also comprise more of the runners. So in terms of win percent, they're still marginally higher, but not significantly. If we look at the place percent chart, we can see that essentially the further back you are, the higher the place percentage. So what that, and you can see this in the table here, what that basically tells us is it's very hard to lead all the way, or to race in the front rank all the way, and to stick it out in big fields at Ascot. Keep in mind that stiff track we saw, and bear in mind that if you're in the lead, there's going to be 26 horses behind you waiting to pounce. So it's probably this is one of the one of the occasions when being at the front is not really an advantage. And again, we can see if we just change it to soft ground and 7 furlongs, we can see that there's not a huge amount of data, but again, held up is still, along with prominent racers, is still really the place to be. So that's that, and you know, accentuating the front runner, the difficult mission facing front runners. Again, 1 from 35 is not good. So that's just some general context. Now, what we need to do, of course, is look at the draw. The draw data will be the same, but the pace data will give us a picture specific to this race, based on the runners in this race, and we can sort that there, and we can see that I'm just going to change this to soft. Oh, I don't know what's happening there. Computer's running a bit slow today. Apologies for that. So am I, in fairness. So where are we? Okay, soft to soft, right, and then we'll just we'll put them in draw order. Really interesting if we look at this block on the far right of the grid, the lead block, there is nothing in there, so it's pretty unclear where the pace is going to come from here. Johnston horses can go forward a bit more than others, so that might be of interest. Now, let's just have a look at the data view. We can see that this coming through looks like he's having his first run in the UK or Ireland. What I want to do, I'm just going to showcase something that's probably going live next week. So this is our development setup, and we've got just a slight change on here, which you may spot while I'm the eagle-eyed amongst you. Now, what I'll do is I'll do a quick compare and contrast, so you can see on the current, if this will change. Wrong tab. Let's try again. Pace tab. We have this grey block with a pace prediction and the data and graphic options on the right hand side. So that's how live is at the moment. However, as of sometime very soon, it will look like this. It'll be a white block, and the reason it's a white block is because I wanted to accentuate the contrast between the new radio buttons here and the background. So what we've got now is an opportunity to view the pace map based on the last 2 runs, the last 3 runs, or the last 4 runs, whereas currently it's based on the last 4 runs, and there's no option about that. So Obviously, sometimes a horse changes its run style. For instance, although it's not a big change, this Alamara Talium, easy for me to say, has raced mid-division in its last 2 runs, but was held up prior to that. And although this isn't a great example race on that basis, you will find that the shape of the race looks different based on whether you consider the last 2 races, where it's got a pace prediction of even, as we can see here. The last 3 races, where it has a possible lone speed in green power, and the last 4 races where I think it's going to go back to even again. So it's quite helpful to see in a race like this where there's no obvious front runner. It's quite helpful to see that this horse Green Power does not present himself, does not step forward to suggest that he might be the pace in the race. But if we look at more recent evidence, and we can see then Green Power does have a more credible pace pressing profile, and the reason for that is, of course, because in Green Power's 4th last race it was held up, and more recently it's raced more prominently. I still need to add the to score the unscored, which is actually just him, and we can see that he's going to be a 4 because he raced near side and was the overall leader. So that enhances his front running claim still further. By the time you look at this race this evening or tomorrow, that'll be a 4, and you'll see that he's probably the pace angle. So that's a little thing that we're bringing in next week. I think it's useful. Certainly gives you those of you who look at pace maps, and I hope that's nearly all of you now, because it's so important to consider these data. Gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of the range of recent form that you want to look at from a pace perspective. Okay, so where does all that leave us? Well, sorting by draw, we can see that this lad Green Power's in stall 1. So he's probably going to take them along on that side. In the high numbers, there's nothing obviously going to go forward, and that's probably going to make life difficult for the high numbers. Middle has some prominent racers, notably the Johnston pair, I suppose, but also Gallipoli of Fahis. So my best guess, I mean, the interesting thing about Low is that you've got this probable leader, and he's drawn against the rail, which is a good place to be. And then you've got a bunch of hold-up horses, a run style that is favoured typically, but whether this race is run at a harum-scarum pace or not, I'm not sure. Not obviously, I'd say. Nevertheless, I'd probably be inclined to be looking, well, certainly low to middle. I think it's going to be quite difficult for a high-numbered horse to win, based on the pace of the race at any rate. Now, let's consider via the Instant Expert the form credentials of the runners, and in a race like this, I want as much data as I can get. So I want to look at the place information, and there's enough data in the window for me not to want to look beyond the 2-year time frame. I'm not really looking for a horse with prehistoric back class. I'm looking for something that's shown an alacrity for conditions in the last couple of years at least. I've changed the going to soft there, and over here I'm looking only at handicap form and flat turf form. Now you'll see that there's a couple of horses, Glorious Journey and Caradoc. Looks like they're making their handicap debuts. You can see Glorious Journey has got HC1, as has, where is he? Caradoc down here has got HC1, and also this top one, which is probably not having his first run in a handicap, but he's having his first run for George Scott in the UK. Now, later on, we'll find out where he got his previous form from when our data provider brings that in. So again, by the time you look at this race, there'll be some content in this window to explain this 80077. Whatever he's been doing it to a reasonable level, because he's top rated on 110, which certainly isn't going to make life easy for him. Working with what we've got then, which is just about the rest of the field. Incidentally, the reason that the can't remember his name, the top horse, the George Scott horse coming through, doesn't feature on the Instant Expert is because there's no data at all. There are no runs in our database for him because he's never run in the UK before. We can only publish that data that we've got, obviously. So that's a challenge there. Now, big field races. One of the things, in fact, just about the first thing I look for is an ability to perform in a big field. So the first thing I'm going to do is sort by place percentage in 16 plus runner fields. And when we do that, we see what will be to some people the usual suspects, the likes of Kinren and certainly Ripoff, who is a bit of a legend in these parts. Keeps climbing up the handicap, keeps running stupendous races, normally for Hayley Turner. I don't know if that's the case here. Yes, it is. So these are the guys that these guys could perform in big fields, and with some, a horse like this, a la Meritalium, he's only had one try. Where he finished 6 lengths mid-division. So you certainly couldn't say he doesn't act in a big field, because he's 0 from 1 and it was a reasonable run. However, a horse like Nicholas T or Zap, for example, this guy's had 9 goes in big fields and he's been fairly well beaten in most of them, although notably in his most recent run last week in the Thirsk Hunt Cup, he was third. He wouldn't be for me just because of his overall profile, but all I'm saying really is that clicking on these buttons now to get the form in question is really useful. And if we look at our mate Ripoff here, we can see that Ascot 7 furlongs, Ascot 7 furlongs, Ascot 7 furlongs, 131, and that included this race last year off a rating of 83, now up to 95, so he's 12 higher, but he did win off 93 later in the season over the same course and distance, so 93 to 95. The weight probably won't beat him. The going is soft. Those runs were on good to firm, as you can see. Now let's have a look at his soft ground form. And again, you can see Ascot here, 7 furlongs soft at the end of last season. Drawn high, held up, finished second. Stayed on to take second. No impression on the winner. So no real worries on the ground either. The class, the grade is obviously not a problem to him. And if we look at the full form for Ripoff, who's a bit of an Ascot dude, it's got to be said. He's, despite being rated 95, he's getting a stone from the top ones. He's really quite, he's got a nice racing weight anyway. So if we do distance and course, that will give us Ascot 7 furlongs. You can see his record, and they're all big fields. It's 1-3, 1-2. I mean, this is just a setup that suits him. If we look at his track location, he is drawn middle-ish, middle to high, which might not be ideal, but there are these 2 Johnston runners around there. Obviously, he's a hold-up horse, so he's going to be played late. And he's the sort of horse that you just want to have on your side, because he's very likely to run his race at his favourite course over his favourite distance. Ripoff's definitely one I want to be on the team. Now, of the others, what we need, what I'd be looking for in this context, 7 furlongs is a bit of a specialist distance, and I'd be interested in a horse like Presidential here, although he's drawn 25, which definitely tempers enthusiasm. But you can see that he's a very consistent horse at this sort of trip, including in big fields here over 7, and these are big fields as well. Doncaster is a straight 7, so not probably a bit easier, but not dissimilar. So he'd be another one, but as I say, the draw kind of puts me off. If I sort it by draw, and then we can see what have we got? We can see field size. I suppose I'm looking for a combination of field size, going, and class, ideally. And this Via Serendipity has got some questions to answer on the going. The class is not a problem. The track is not a problem. Hayley Turner again here, incidentally. I think she probably just rides these straight 7 and a mile very well. You can see that this lad was fifth in this race last year off 90. He's up 8 now, but that's because he won here in a mile race in the summer last year off 95. So again, his rating won't beat him. Soft ground, you can see his good form here is all on quicker. That would be a reservation for sure, as would the fact that overall in big fields, well, in actual fact, I mean, he's if he'd finished, he was only beaten a length and a quarter here, and if he'd finished 4th, he'd be showing 2 from 4. So I wouldn't want to get, and there's a good chance he didn't stay in the Cambridgeshire. So yeah, I mean, certainly he acts in a big field. It's just the going that would be a concern for me with him. Who else have we got? Hadjam has been rumbled in this class, although not beaten far in the international last year, not beaten particularly far in this big handicap at the end of last season. But he's 0 from 4 placed in class 2, and that's enough for him not to be of interest. Further down, Cape Byron, drawn 10. He's fine in big fields, second behind Ripoff over the course and distance. 2 runs at Ascot, including 1 on soft here in that was on that's the Champions Day handicap, which is worth absolute fortune, 112 grand. Track leader shaken up, kept on, and he was drawn 8 there, raced prominently, so run style might not be ideal. His form at the track's fair though. He's of mild interest. Certainly couldn't say he's weighted out of it. He was second off 101, he's off 103 here. His run on soft ground was a little bit less good than his other runs, but having said all that, for this 112 grand handicap, he was sent off favourite. So he's obviously got something about him, and he's in the right place on the track. First time out, trainer's in good form, Andrea Atzani's in good form. Just probably want to look at his record off a layoff, which we can do by selecting him in full form and clicking 60 plus days, and we can see that there is no data there. Oh, that's just bear with me a second there. That's a little quirk in our development environment. If I go back to the live website, which I should have been looking at, Cape Byron, 60 plus days. There we are. So you can see he's won at Ascot off a layoff, and he ran pretty well the other time. He goes off favourite quite a lot, so he's obviously quite well regarded at home. And again, off 103, he's getting about a stone from the guys at the top. Sorry, about £7 from the guys at the top. And he's drawn on what I think will be a favoured strip. I just want to check his run style. He's a hold-up horse typically as well, although did race prominently. Interestingly, the 2 times he's raced prominently, he's been more disappointed. He's run less well than the times he's been held up. And also, when Atzani's ridden him, he's generally run pretty well, although David Egan rode a good race there as well, so I'm probably reading too much into that. For this jockey, we just select the jockey there, and you can see that he's 2-1-1-4-0-4-2 for Atzani. So Atzani knows this horse very well. He'd be the other one to go on my ticket. We don't just have the odds in yet, so let's just have a quick look on Odds Checker to see what price these guys are. They'd be my 2 against the field. Get rid of this annoying pop-up that we get on Odds Checker every time now. And we want to look at tomorrow and Ascot. Ascot 3:25. Nope. 4 o'clock. Yes. Probably find their favourite and second favourite now. But that's another thing actually. It's there is an option under my Geegeez to turn off the odds display. Now the fact that I'm looking at this race a day and a half in advance means that the odds are not there anyway, but as you can see on the race card options, under the race card options, you've got a hide option here. So if you select that, you can do your form study without being influenced by the market, which is quite a good exercise. I mean, even if you would rather normally see the market, it's useful to do this occasionally as an exercise in kind of establishing what your level of judgment is. And you can see in actual fact that that Ripoff and Cape Byron are 2 of the top 3 in the betting. Now interestingly, looking at the draw of these horses, Kinren's in 22, Blue Mist is in 23, Glorious Journey is 18, Ripoff is 16, George of Hearts is 27, Sanad and Presidential 20 and 25, Raising Sand is 26. All of these high numbers, where the pace is not, feature quite prominently in the betting. So I think that's quite interesting. If Via Serendipity had a bit of soft ground form, I'd have been attracted to his case, but he doesn't. I think Cape Byron, assuming he's fit enough, you can see actually he's been very well backed here. Yeah, okay, so he might have missed the boat there, but certainly I can see why he's being backed, and Ripoff would be the other one for me. So that this video's rumbling on now, so I'm going to close it off by saying that based on all of the information that I've presented and blurted through, I'd be looking to take Ripoff and Cape Byron against the field. As always in these big field handicaps, you can expect extra places, and it's well worth availing of that with Best Odds Guaranteed where you can get it. That's enough from me for now. I hope again that this has added a little bit of value. If I do big field races like this in future, then it's likely to be a longer video. If I do more run-of-the-mill stuff, as I did last time with Lingfield, then hopefully they'll be a bit shorter. But either way, I hope you've got some utility from this half-hour video, and I wish you the best of luck with your weekend wagering. Matt Bisogno saying thank you for watching, and from my kitchen, bye for now.